So the Fox News host Neil Cavuto is kind of an interesting character because he is a throwback to the John McCain / Mitt Romney type of conservatives. And what I mean by that is he still agrees with Trump on policy stuff overwhelmingly, like 90% or so agreement with Trump on policy. He's all about tax cuts for the rich. He's all about tax cuts for corporations. He's all about deregulating the marketplace. He's very elitist in his economic sensibilities and even probably right-leaning on social issues. But he also is like a country club type, right? He doesn't like the rabble. He doesn't like the cult of personality around Trump. And also, I think he clearly sees something that a lot of right-wingers don't, which is that attack now coming from Tim Walz and Kamala and the Democrats of look, these guys are just weird. Neil Cavuto knows that's true. He knows that's true, and he knows that Republicans often have the bad habit of overreaching in the kinds of attacks that they do against Democrats. So I tell you all that to set this clip up. You have, what's his name? Oh, Senator John Kennedy. Senator John Kennedy, he goes on Neil Cavuto's show, and Cavuto is not having it with the kind of attacks that Kennedy wants to launch against Kamala. So let's watch and we'll break it down.
Alex Castellanos, one of the brightest political commentators I know, and he's made the point that the burden on the vice president is to prove to the American people that she's a serious person. Margaret Thatcher didn't giggle. Golda Meir didn't giggle. When you look at the polls, fair or not, many Americans, and again, this may not be fair, but I'm just telling you what the polls show. Many Americans think that the vice president is a little bit of a ding-dong.
Oh, is that what the polls show? Senator Kennedy, is that what the polls show? Show me the poll where the majority of Americans call Kamala Harris a, quote, ding-dong. That's made up. You made that up. Neil Cavuto knows you made that up. Okay, wait for it.
She's not serious.
Well, this ding-dong, Senator, has risen in the polls, and I'm wondering if the strategy to focus on her laugh or the former president calling her nasty and crazy really promotes that push to show she's not up to the job. Does it look petty? Does it say to judge her on this level looks like a strategy that could backfire on Republicans? By all means, get her on the issues that matter, like you've talked about abortion, to clarify what this Supreme Court push might be about. But to focus on this other stuff just looks dumb.
He's seriously put off by these lines of attack.
Well, what I was going to say, Neil, if I could finish my thought, when you look at the polls, fair or not, what the polls, the crosstabs show, is that those Americans who have an opinion of the vice president think that, number one, she's a bit of a ding-dong.
Neil Cavuto provides the most sober commentary of all time. Listen, making fun of her laugh, calling her stupid, and doing these sorts of things, isn't that kind of gonna turn people off, normal people off? Don't you think they'll look at that and say that's kind of mean-spirited and unfair? I'm not really with that. And he just reiterates the same shit he said. Well, the polls show she's a bit of a ding-dong. Again, there's not a single poll that asks the question, is Kamala Harris a ding-dong? What the fuck? By the way, what he means by loon wing is, of course, the far left of the Democratic Party, the Bernie Sanders and the AOC, bro. Why don't you ask Bernie and AOC? Why don't you ask the members of the so-called loon wing of he would consider me part of the loon wing of the Democratic Party. Kamala is not somebody who's in agreement with my politics, not in agreement with Bernie Sanders' politics. And the fact that they don't know this, or they do know this and they're just lying, it's pathetic, because again, it shows there's not a single honest line of attack, which is embarrassing.
San Francisco.
Well, that member of the loon wing, Senator, that I'm not, casting aspersions either way, though. That member of the loon wing is now, dead even with Donald Trump in one battle state ground after another. Now, I'm not saying that might last. I am saying that this loon is surging, and if the Republican approach to her is to treat her like a loon and a cackle, and she is just an empty suit, I wonder how far that'll go.
Well, I'm sorry if that offends you, Neil, but I'm just telling you what the people of America think.
I'm just telling you what the polls are showing right now. Now, if you think they're short-lived, they're not going to last, and you're okay with this approach of talking about her laugh and nasty and disrespectful and all this stuff that Donald Trump has said, you don't think part of that is going to kill you at the polls?
I'm telling you what I think the American people think right now, based on the polling that I've seen. And let me say it again. I think that fair or not, and it may upset you, but fair or not, the American people think, those who have an opinion of the vice president think that, number one, she's a little bit of a ding-dong. She's not a serious...
He can't help himself. He can't help himself. He has the IQ of a mosquito. Because Neil Cavuto's trying to move the conversation along. Well, she is a ding-dong. Look at Neil's face. Look at Neil's face.
Person. They've had one vegetable in chief. They don't want another.
See, the problem for Republicans in this instance is they are fundamentally incapable of understanding the difference between a strategy critique and a substantive critique. Neil Cavuto is not saying, I'm against Donald Trump and I'm for Kamala Harris, right? I agree with Democratic policies and I don't agree with Republican policies. That's not what he's saying. But all the right-wingers who watched this clip, that's what they took away. They thought this strategy criticism was a substantive criticism. And again, that just goes to show you, who really are the ding-dongs in the conversation? If we're going to talk about ding-dongs, all right, I got more. I got a little more for you.
The idea that we should have a law that says you can have an abortion at any point, no questions asked, even up until the moment of birth, I think for most Americans is a loon wing position. That's just my opinion. And
by the way, that is not the position of the Democrats. The position of the Democrats is Roe versus Wade. Roe versus Wade is broken down into first trimester, everything's allowed. Second trimester, abortions are mostly allowed with some exceptions. And then third trimester, if the states so choose, they can ban late-term abortion. So this is the go-to Republican. You guys want to kill babies a minute before they're going to be born. And the overwhelming majority of Democrats do not want to do that, and the law does not reflect that, so go fuck yourself.
So what the
just to make it, no, you're absolutely fair game to make it. I'm just wondering how you think that will resonate with women when she is called nasty and crazy and a ding-dong and all and disrespectful between you and the president, what has been said about her. I'm just wondering, do you worry how that comes across? And maybe you draw no distinction between a female candidate and a male one, and that's fair game, but that this could hurt you with female voters with these type of comments.
Well, let me say it again. Sure. The vice president is a candidate for president of the United States. I don't care about her gender. Neil, maybe you do, but I don't. I don't care about her race. I care about her
competence. Then why call her a ding-dong? And
I'm telling you what the polling shows.
He keeps saying there's polling that calls her a ding-dong. That is not true.
You what the polling shows. And it does. And I'll be glad to sit down with you and walk you through the polls.
Please do, because I never know when it's constructed to call people names, Senator. I just, on the left or the right. But
I'm sorry if that hurts your feelings, but let me say it again.
Senator, you keep bringing it back to my feelings. My feelings matter a little. All I'm telling you is if you think you can gain this November calling people names, I don't know how far that goes, left or right, but we'll see. It's still early to your point.
Your feelings seem to me like they matter to you a lot, Neil, and I'm trying to be objective here. Let me say it again. Are you really being objective, Senator? I just think you've got a bash-a-thon of name calling at her. If you call that being objective, I don't know. But Senator, I do want to thank you for coming. Well, thank you for having me, Neil. I hope you have a better day.
Yeah, so do I. Hope you have a better day. We'll have more after this.
He was not happy. Look, here's my position on this. I don't have the Neil Cavuto position completely, where he's been name-calling in politics, how dare you? No. Name-calling is fine, as long as you build up to it with relevant facts and policy positions, right? If you're bringing up something about their corruption or their record or their shitty policy positions, lay them out, and then you could call them the name. Because sometimes the name is appropriate, right? I call a lot of people idiots and morons and clowns and dipshits and everything under the sun. But every time I do it, there is a substantive reason to do it, right? And I think what Neil Cavuto's actual criticism is like, you went right to, she's a ding-dong, she laughs all the time, she's an idiot or whatever, right? And it's like, you didn't even say things before that to justify that take. And that's the problem. And the other thing is, again, the Republican Party right now has the stench of being extremist and weird. And Neil's like, Hey, moron, you're feeding into that. You're feeding into that. You got to come with something better than that. And look, this is the first time in a long time I've seen the Republicans in this much of disarray in terms of their messaging. Usually they have message discipline. Usually they hammer away on Democrats' weak points. And right now they have absolutely none of that. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.